Good afternoon, Amita ji. I most cordially welcome all of you today to the fourth day of this 1 week faculty development program organized by the PG Department of English in collaboration with the Department of English, SN Sinha College, Jahanabad. I welcome our speakers, Dr. A. Karunakar from Hyderabad and Dr. Anita Singh from BHU. So now I hand over to Dr. Arvind Kumar Sunil, Professor of English, Gaya College, Gaya, for the further proceedings. Dr. Sunil, over to you. You have to unmute yourself, Dr. Sunil.
Unmute
Dr. Arvind Kumar Sunil.
yourself. You have the power.
Unmute. Well, I have unmuted myself,
Yeah.
Mr. Jha.
Yes, over to you. Now you can start the function today.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to you all. This is A.K. Sunil, Professor, Department of English, Gaya College, Gaya, talking to you as a moderator of this program. First up, the moderator will be Dr. Dinanath. So, honorable guest speaker, Professor A. Karunakar, Professor and Dean of Osmania University, Hyderabad, the convener of this program, Professor Dr. Neha Singh, Head of the Department of English, MU, the co-convener, Professor Subodh Kumar Jha and his team, the coordinator, Professor Neeraj Kumar, all the faculty members of English Department, Magadha University, my college colleagues, teachers, research scholars, and even some senior students of MA who have joined this meeting. Today is the day 4 of this program. And early morning, I was sitting and just doing the assessment of the last day's activities. And I was also asking myself whether we are getting charged. Is the faculty development program having some meaningful effect on our mind and heart? Of course, I found that in this COVID-infected scenario, at least this program has charged us fully, has ignited our teaching and learning activities. And I hope that after a week-long program, as the time will advance, more and more things will come up and new things will also emerge, not only related to the subject on which we are talking as emerging trends in English language and literature. Some new trends will also emerge so far as development of faculty is concerned. Honorable Karunakar sir, had it been offline program, we could have we could have greeted you with bouquet, shawl, and memento. But, but as it is, due to the restriction of COVID-19, we are connected online. But you must know that our boundless love, respect, and honor for you cannot deter us from the welcome that would have been given by way of offline. Honorable Sir, and the participants, Dr. Karunakar is a big signature among the teachers of English. Right from the classroom to conference, from research activity to, I say, creative activity, publications, he has proved his worth. That is, to his credit, goes many publications, and also he has edited many books. He has attended some national and international programs. As I have been informed, he also attended the I should say, TSOL conference in USA. And to his credit also goes the organizing the conference of All India English Teachers Association of 2018. It is a coincidence here that our head, Madam Nivaji, under her patronage, and she was the convener. We this year in Magad University, in 2020, we organized this conference. So on behalf of Madam or of the department here, the convener of earlier program of All India Teachers Conference is being welcomed here by the convener of 2020 All India Teachers Conference program. The Dr. Karunakar, apart from being professor and dean of arts, Usmania University, is also director of foreign activities in his university. The lecture today that is to be delivered by Professor Karunakar highlight the theme of cultural collision, rootlessness, literature of alienation. And I think through these expressions, most of you could have understood what is his topic. Obviously, the topic is diasporic literature. And I'm reading the main topic. transnational spaces and Indian diaspora writing. Once again, I am repeating the topic for, for Professor Karuna's lecture is transnational pieces and Indian diaspora writings. I no longer want to linger the, the introduction, although sir is not, uh, uh, sir is such a man of uh, wide repute that that giving more introduction will be quite uh, quite upset. So right now I'm I'm once again express my sense of greetings, my honor to the guests, to all the participants. I welcome you all, and now over to Professor Karunakar. Thank you. Well,
Sir, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, yeah, I unmute. Okay, I'm audible.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah,
very
thank
well.
you. Yeah, thank you, Professor Sunil ji, and thank you, Professor Niba Singh ji, for inviting me for this program. I once again thank you for inviting me for the 64th All India English Teachers Conference. It was a very nice experience to be in Bihar, in Magad city. And I thank you all the faculty members of Magad University English Department, Professor Anjumji, Professor Nikhilji, and Professor other professors in the department, Neerajji, and other folks in the department. Thank you very much. And I thank you especially to Sunilji for giving me elaborate introduction. And right. So the topic which I have given for this faculty development program is transnational spaces and diaspora writing, Indian diaspora writing. And when we go into the transnational things, the transnational or transnationalism, uh, diaspora, globalization, privatization, marketization, they have a subtle variation in that. And when the things comes into being, the transnational or transnationalism, this was in not in more use in the medieval times or in ancient times, but there was a movement from one place to other place without any legal documents, without any legal procedures. People used to move from one place to other place for various reasons. And from the times immemorial, the Gujaratis were the most transnational people than the other Indians. And later on, South Indians became more transnational. If you go to the Southeast Asian nations like Thailand and Cambodia, Vietnam, you can find the traces of the South Indians there by means of their temples and other things. Later on, this has been, somehow, gone into the dust, after the decolonization, when every country has established its own boundaries. So the transnationalism has become very difficult, and people have to move to other country by means of legal documents. And therefore, even in the recently, the vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris, who recently talked about the transnationalism, suddenly she remembered that she belongs to India and her ancestors are from India, like that. The reason is that, the question of the identity, the question of alienation, which makes us to remember India, because Indian population there in America is over 20 million. And so therefore, they make a lot of difference in the presidential election. So she needs the support of the Indian population. So that's the reason, she talks about that Indian identity And before that, she never talked about that one, and that now she remembers. And recently she gave an statement to the Washington Post on 14th August 2020. She says, I quote here, the engagement echoed the border ideals of post-colonial India, anchored in transnational solidarity with other people of the decolonizing world. This is what she said this was she has given a statement to the Washington Post. Now she said that, how the decolonization happened, and how the people become a transnational, and suddenly people are remembering their roots, their identity, and that has become very important in this context. Another great the American scientist says that, Victoria Herman, it is in a region where transnational governance is based on dialogue, mutual interest, and respect for indigenous rights. So therefore, the transnational is totally depends on the mutual understanding, and it's based on a mutual dialogue. It cannot based on what we call on dominance. The America cannot dominate on India, or India can't dominate on the subcontinent nations. Nobody can't dominate on others. Only a friendship can be emerged by means of a mutual dialogue, by understanding the cultures, various cultures, where respecting the each other culture. So therefore this transnational identity comes into focus. So transnational signifies interconnectivity between profile and economic issues of the nations. Transnationalism is another form of capitalism which is more methodical and strategically pushes it takes to capture the international market with with a migratory workforce, globalized corporations, global money flow, global information flow, and global scientific corporation. So this is where, how the people get connected from one nation to other nations by means of the intelligence flow, investing their intelligence in other country, and connecting with them by means of their intelligence, by means of their scientific growth. So it's not, people have not moved to the other countries. They have not moved by their they have moved to other countries by their own wish. If at all Indian diaspora has moved to America, it's only for their growth, not for the what we call for something else. So they have grown there, and later on, they have started contributing their might to the both the nations, India and also the US, or India and Middle East, or India and the and Britain. And in this connection, Randolph Brown says that, he popularized this term, the transnational, in the early 20th century to describe a new way of thinking about relationship between the cultures. So he popularized this particular word, transnational, to what we call to bridge the between the two cultures, and to bring a relationship between the cultures, between the Indian culture, American culture, between the India and the Caribbean cultures, between the India and the African culture. So when we understand these two cultures, new relationship will emerge, new understandings will be emerged, and there will be a beautiful cooperation between the two nations. So therefore it says that. But now the diaspora is overused. In this connection, Alexander Boyle says, in it is new frequently employed in academic discourses to point that the meaning of the word being evaded away through the overuse. In the sense, there is a subtle distinction between diaspora and the transnationalism. So diaspora is overused. Usually diaspora is used to study the dislocation of the population, but later on, it has come to it has used as in the academic discourse, that are diaspora of the Caribbean countries, diaspora of America, diaspora of New England, diaspora of England. So therefore, now that's why, the Alexander Boyle says that there is a subtle difference between the diaspora and the transnational. Transnational is always, talks about bridging between the two cultures by means of engaging, through mutual dialogue, by means of engaging in transferring the scientific knowledge from one country to other country, and making other country to prosper. But whereas in case of that, when we talk about the diaspora deals with the dislocation of people, how the people were dislocated. When we come to the VS Naipaul parents didn't go to the Caribbean islands on their own will. They were taken forcibly by the rulers of India, East India Company, promising them, I mean, a better life in Caribbean islands. So when they went there, suddenly they were, put to the different culture. It's called Creole culture, Creole society, a society which emerged out of the fusion of Europeans and the Africans. So Africans were taken much before the Indians were taken to the Caribbean islands. African went there as a slaves, and whereas Indian went as a skilled labor. Indians were known for the agriculture, cultivation. So therefore, they want to have, cultivate sugarcane in those Caribbean islands because that temperature was suitable to grow the uh, the the sugarcane. Therefore, the Indians were the best agriculturists. So therefore, by forcefully they took these people to the Caribbean islands, the Fiji islands, and Suriname, South Africa, and other countries. Now, this dislocated population of India, to study where this population has gone, how many people have gone to the South Africa, how many Indians have gone to the Caribbean islands, how many Indians have gone to the Suriname, how many Indians have gone to these people, to the other countries. So therefore, studying the what we call displacement of this population deals, the diaspora deals with this kind of a thing. And the transnationalism is that, it's where, it tries to, I mean, bring a bridge between the two cultures, that, between the cultures of India and other countries. Now the process of globalization started in 1990, where, the globalization has come forcefully into the India, and everything got globalized. Because of the globalization, the world has become very small, and there is a larger connectivity between the place to place through by means of social networking, internet, and as well as other ways of connecting the people, others. And therefore, the concept of diaspora and transnationalism differs to the extent that they emphasize different aspects of the movements and identity formations have tended to merge in recent academic discourses. In the recent academic discourses, in the writing of the recent writers, we can see the difference, the subtle difference between the diaspora and transnationalism, and where they emphasize this kind of what we call a movement, how the people got dislocated and how people went to the other parts of the world. And now the and now in the present day context, Indian diaspora is around 32 million people all over the world. And only in America, we have more than 20 million people, and also in England, around 3 to 4 million people in other countries. Now, this diaspora has become a soft power in the Indian foreign policy. Earlier, Indian foreign policy never thought of the diaspora. Now, it has become a very, serious thing for the Indian to think about the diaspora population, because the remittances are heavy. And remittance are heavy from America, remittance are heavy from the Middle East, remittance are heavy from the England. So therefore, their contribution to the Indian economic growth is tremendous. So therefore, Indian government has changed its foreign policy to look after the diaspora people. In the first instance of diaspora witnessed in the post-independence India, globalization provided better opportunities to Indian academicians, skilled labor, professionals, and students to migrate. We have seen after 1990s, there is a huge migration from India to other countries. How come America has more than 20 million Indian population? It's only because of the what we call globalization. People have come to know that there is more prospects in India, in America. So therefore, Indian academicians, they have, gone to America. Indian students every year from India, 2.5 lakh people, Indian students will go to America. Now you can understand that how much America earns from the Indian students. At the same time, Indian government also earns from the Indian diaspora of America, more than that, because the remittances is more. So the Indian don't mind sending with the students from India to America, 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs, because the remittance will be more in course of time. That's the reason why, it encourages Indian diaspora to go to America, to other countries likewise. And this the immigrants Indian proved successful with their strong presence is felt in Great Britain and America, and the migration of people across cultures and borders, which is termed as an ethnospaces. So therefore, this migration is termed as an ethnospaces, because the ethnic Indians in America, ethnic Indians in Caribbean islands, ethnic Indians in Britain, ethnic Indians in South Africa, by means of their distinct culture. People, I mean, just they don't go like that to the America, to other countries. They go with their culture, they go with their rituals, they go there with their food habits, they go there with their dress habits. So they're easily identified, in the foreign countries. So therefore, they create an ethno space, their own space there, and their presence is felt. But I mean, coming in contact with the Western culture is somewhat difficult for the Indians. Therefore, we see the cross culture conflict will come there. Sometimes, some people will have a cultural shock also, because the Western culture is more open than the Indian culture. So therefore, when see this openness there in the West, who are not used to this kind of openness, they feel themselves, I mean, alienated. They feel themselves that dislocated, and they are not part of this kind of a thing. But in course of time, Indians proved, I mean, that they can adjust to any kind of an environment, and they can adjust with any kind of a culture, and they come out of that one, and they have took the best out of the Western culture, and they use for the betterment of them, for themselves, and they emerge victorious. And therefore, we could see the so many CEOs in America, I mean, from India, so many success people in America, so many Nobel Prize winners in the West from the India. And this is the reason, how they, I mean, become successful, by means of their hard work, by means of their association with the in the age of globalism. The world has become small, and its inhabitants have come much closer. With the use of internet and social media, the images and ideas travel exceedingly faster. Culture plays a significant role in the age of globalization. Now the culture plays a very significant role. Now what we have to discuss is that the present day Indian culture, the Bollywood plays a very significant role. I know that. And when the Raj Kapoor film released in Russia with the Russian subtitles, it has earned 20 million rubles. Can you imagine these things? How much money Indian Bollywood is earning for India and all over the world? And especially the Bollywood is hit in South Africa, wherever there is Indian community. The Bollywood is hit in America. Indians are the first people who see the movies much earlier than the Indians who are in India. It releases much early than India in America. So therefore, American ethnic people use the movie, see the movie much earlier to the Indians in India. So that's where the Indian Bollywood, it carried it Indian culture to the what we call to the West. And people, I mean, got influenced with the Indian culture, Indian music, Indian dance. At the same time, Indian festival, the way Indians do the festivals, the way the Indians perform I mean, the rituals, the time of the marriages, at the time of the various other religious programs. So this way, the Indian culture got the I mean got more popular in the West because of the Bollywood and Bollywood films. This is where the culture plays a significant role in the age of globalization. At the backdrop of Indian diaspora, due to the cultural polarity, the problem of cross-cultural conflict comes about in the lives of the immigrants. The problem, with cross-cultural people who can't adjust to the Western culture. So naturally, this cross-cultural conflict will come, when they compare their culture with the other culture. And this, I mean, the question of identity arises. Therefore, he feels that he is not part of that, and he can't adjust to that one. So he will get a cultural shock. Some people, they come back, and some people, they stay back, and they adjust to that environment, and they strive to live in that country and become prosperous. Now, how this identity is, I mean, overcome there. The identity is overcome by means of making wealth. The Jews, who have they spread across the world. Now, how their identity is felt among the other cultures and other societies, it's felt only by means of, I mean, making wealth. And if you remember, I think you people might have read the Merchant of Venice, where we see the Jewish character Shylock lending money to the, to the Bassanio, or to the Antonio. So why a Jewish man have to lend money with there were no other people to lend money? Because the Jewish people, I mean, they want to, get identified by means of wealth. So they will be after the wealth. They make a wealth, and they identify a wealthy man is more identified than any other man. At the same time, even the educated man is also identified. In the Indian saying, the Vidyanam Lakshmi. If at all you have a Vidya, you will have a Lakshmi. If you have a Lakshmi, you will also, make progress towards the education. So therefore, running after the money and making money, getting identified that is a wealthy man. With that, identity is created. Sometimes, some people get lost in the process of making an identity. This is what we see. This is what we see. The Indian expatriate tries to understand the reasons for their displacement, suffering due to alienation and nostalgia towards the homeland, along with with the issues they have with the cultural identity, as well as with the different generations of their populations. So therefore, Indian diaspora, Indian expatriates, they have this kind of a problems, and they try to identify themselves in the foreign soil, and sometimes they have a cultural crisis. At the same time, they try to know about the people who have migrated. As the expatriates no longer live in their home country, they have thematically recognized the diaspora experience to achieve their goals and ambitions that help them to balance their previous and the present lives. Only their goals will balance their previous and the present life. The previous life was not good in India. They were not prosperous, so they went to foreign country for the better prospects. So if they are successful, then naturally they balance with the what we call with the past and the present. The diaspora experience is strategically related to cultural hybridity and transnational migration. So therefore, it is directly linked to the cultural hybridity. New culture emerges, as I just now mentioned, that Creole culture or Creole society. This Creole society is emerged out of the what we call two cultures, the European culture and the African culture. A new generation has come called Creole generation or Creole culture in the Caribbean islands. I mean, they talk a language which has the essence of European languages, and also some of the dialects of the African languages. So the most commonly occurring themes in the diasporic writing are double consciousness, displacement, dislocation, alienation, self-identity, reliving one's past cultural shock, nostalgia, and problems of assimilation. So these are some of the most the occurred themes in the diaspora, Indian diaspora writing about the double consciousness. They are conscious about their past, and also they're conscious about their present. So when they are conscious about these two things, they adjust their present life in that in the foreign soil, or where they have settled at present. At the same time, they also understand that they are dislocated from their homeland, and now they are settled in the foreign soil, like that. So we have many writers who have I mean uh, uh, placed these themes in their writings. Writers like V.S. Naipaul, Raja Rao, and Amitabh Ghosh, Salman Rushdie, Vikram Seth, and the most popular modern women writers, diaspora writers, Kamala Markandeya, Bharti Mukherjee, Chitra Banerjee, Divakaruni, Jhumpa Lahari, and Kiran Desai. There were other writers like the pre-independence writers like Neeraj Sri Chaudhary, and also Vasanji, and other writers were also there, who talked about their roots in their works. So now we take the V.S. Naipaul, and how he has brought the cultural conflict in his works. At the same time, though he is not a diasporic writer in the sense, he is a son of an immigrant labor, was forcibly immigrated to the Caribbean islands, and he was born to the immigrant labor. So he's by birth he's a Caribbean. He's not an Indian. But as he was born to the Indian immigrants, he knows that he belongs to India. His roots are in India, and he belongs to the Indian culture. So therefore, his culture also gives him a kind of sense of alienation, sense of rootlessness, sense of dislocation in the Caribbean islands. And he also searches for identity, and that search leads him to what we call to the England, where he gets his education. From there, many times he visited India to understand the Indian culture and want to get connected to his roots, want to get connected to his culture and imbibe that into the what you call into the works. V.S. Naipaul, born in Trinidad in 1932, the descendant of indentured labor shipped from India. This disposed child of Raj has came on a long and marvelous journey. His contribution to liberate got himself Booker Prize in 1971 and Nobel Prize in 2001. Naipaul's first novel, The Mystic Mashur, 1957, is about the immigrant East Indian and the decoy of their culture. So now the first novel, the Mystic of the Mashur, in that it talks about the shall I continue, sir? Anything? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can I go ahead? Somebody is talking.
That was by mistake. Somebody spoke in between.
Okay.
Perhaps his mic was not
Yeah,
mute.
yeah, yeah.
But,
Thank
sir,
you.
I have a request to make. If you could be a bit more visible on the screen as the participants demand. Actually, they want you to be a bit more visible on the screen.
Okay.
Sir, sir, Narayan sir,
Yeah,
yeah, you have आप अपना माइक म्यूट कीजिए सर.
yeah.
Dr. Narayan. Yes. Yes, sir. You can continue, sir. Professor Karnakar, you can continue.
Right now. Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are quite audible, but the participants, they demand that you be a bit more visible on the screen. They cannot see you properly, perhaps.
Okay. The problem is that, the universities functions up to 1 o'clock because of the COVID. So university is closed. I have to rush back home to participate in this. That's the reason. If university, if I have been in the university, I would have all the what you call paraphernalia to
Yeah.
stand and to speak. Now I have come home. I don't have the podium here. So I have to put on a table and I have to, I mean,
Yeah.
talk to you people. That's the reason, probably I may not that visible, but I think my face is visible. I think so. Is it?
Okay. It's
Okay.
okay, sir.
Okay. Or let me see if there anything I can do. Now photo visible ఎట్లయితే మొత్తం ఓకే okay ma'am, now I'm visible. Hello.
Yeah, it's okay, sir, now.
Okay ma'am, right. Right. So V.S. Naipaul's first novel, The Mystic Mashur in 1957, is about an immigrant East Indian and the decay of their culture. So when it talks about the what we call how the Indian culture has decayed in the Caribbean islands. I told you just now that the Indians were thrown into the Creole culture, Creole society. Creole society is a new society which emerged out of the fusion of the Caribbean, the Africans and also the Europeans. Europeans and Africans were the first people who has migrated to the Caribbean islands. The Europeans went as a masters and Africans went there as a slaves. So in course of time, because of the relationship between these two cultures, a new culture has emerged, and that culture was totally new to the Indian people were most of them were conservatives, and most of them or vegetarians. So when they went there, they could see that the Europeans and also the Africans, their main diet is the non-vegetarian. So whereas the Indians main diet is a vegetarian, so therefore the clash has come between the Indian laborers and also with the African laborers. So then they have to maintain a separate identity where to protect themselves. And in course of time, their descendants, their children, who were become a part of that particular society, started, giving up their native culture and adapting the Western culture or the Creole culture, like that. And there, the VS Naipaul's, feels, very, nervous, and also very, worried for the decay of the Indian culture there in this novel. Now here the protagonist Ganesh, shown as a failed English teacher, and this man, the Ganesh, the main protagonist of the novel, he takes. Naturally, I told you just now that how a person is identified in a foreign society or in a foreign system is identified by only by means of making himself a most popular one, in the sense of money, or in the sense of education, or in the sense of influence. So therefore, his school teacher will never make much difference in any society. So he begins his career as school teacher, but he fails in his fails in the role of a school teacher. Then he takes a role of a mature, then as an he tries as an author, and as a mystic, and finally he becomes a member of the Trinidad as Legislative Assembly. With that, he identifies. But the search from his school teacher to the what we call to the member of the assembly is a big journey, and there you find many setbacks, many sufferings, and he undergoes all these sufferings, and finally reach the what we call that only because of the what we call is hard work. And the author and a mystic, and ultimately becomes a member of Trinidad Legislative Assembly. All his adventures are search for an identity, while placing the immigrant Indian character in the Creole society. Naipaul evokes comedy by means of Indian rituals, dress, and the and the food habits. So people, they laugh at the Indian people, the Creole people, or the descendants of the Africans and also the Europeans. They laugh when they see the Indian, because Indian is not dressed like them. Indian is dressed in a paisama or in a sherwani, or with the waistcoat and a topi on his head. So he looks so typical in that dress. So therefore, the people of the Caribbean island, they laugh at the dress of the Indians there, and also the Indian food habits. Indians are mostly the vegetarians, and also rituals, performing various kinds of rituals. For everything there is a ritual in India, and they carried this ritual to India. Whenever a child is born, a ritual, and when there is a marriage, there is a ritual, and all kinds of things. For everything there is a ritual. That rituals, look something very funny to the Africans, also to the Europeans. So they laughed at this kind of these things. And this kind of suffering they have undergone there, and in course of time they have emerged successful. So the journey from the school teacher, failed school teacher, to the member of the parliament, that that proves that Indians have overcome the this kind of struggles. The novel set in Trinidad highlight the average immigrant Indian struggling to find societal recognition. As a son of an immigrant Indian, Naipaul has understand the plight of an immigrant, and makes a compassionate observation of individual entrapped in a unique situation. Thus Naipaul makes a serious attempt to highlight the problems of an Indian who suffers from an alienation and identity. So through this character Ganesh, now he highlights the problems of an immigrant Indian, what kind of a suffering the immigrant Indian undergone in a foreign soil in an Indian land, and what sacrifices he has made himself to be a successful. At the same time, he highlights the problems of alienation, and the problems of the identity, the cultural identity, identifying themselves as an prosperous Indian in America, sorry, in the Caribbean islands. So the entire novel deals about this kind of a thing. And here, though he is the Caribbean by birth, but the ancestors are from India. He understands the ancestral roots, and also the longing for a homeland. So whenever he has this kind of the struggle, he used to come to India. He used to travel in India at length and try to understand the people, and goes back to what we call to this place. and he brought out these kind of sufferings in his works. And his second novel, House of Mr. Biswas, which was published in 1961, and this novel is the fourth novel. And this novel, the other three novels are not made much of economical the progress, but this novel, got a lot of critical accumulation, and it recognized worldwide. He made a lot of the money in this. In all his novels, Naipaul deals with the themes of exile, alienation, dislocation, and displacement. House of Mr. Biswas is a fiction of displacement and exile. So, in the words of Nagarajan, this particular novel is a novel of the displacement and exile. And the central theme of the novel is the protagonist's quest for house and his obsession to own it becomes futile. The central theme of this novel is, his obsession to own a house, and that obsession becomes a futile one. And even in case of yes Naipaul also, he has an obsession to have a permanent settlement and at one place. But finally decided that he would he I mean that his place of settlement is England. He settles in England, and he stays for more than 29 years. But that long stay in England also never makes him a satisfied man. Even he felt that he is a refuge in a foreign soil. In his words, V.S. Naipaul long stay of 27 years at London and having a professional success failed to have emotional bond with the country of choice. That was his choice. He would have settled in America, he would have settled in India, but he said he can't adjust to the that what you call to the India. So therefore he chose the England, and he settled in England, but he stayed for more than 27 years. But his long stay could not make him satisfactory. He is always felt outsider and alienated. His remarks clearly reflect this. London is my metropolitan center, it is my commercial center, and yet I know that it is a kind of limbo, and that I am a refugee, in the sense that I am always peripheral. One's concerns are not the concerns of the local people. So local people are English people. He is not a local man. Though he got on a professional success there, though he is recognized all over the world, though he was knighted in England, and though he got a Booker Prize given by the England, and though he got a Nobel Prize, but he was not a satisfied man at heart. Always he felt that he is alienated, and he is staying as a refugee in alien land in spite of staying for long years. These kind of a rootlessness always we see in his works. Whether you take the what I mean the first novel, the mystic, the mystic measure, or the fourth novel, the House of Mr. Biswas, and also the other novels, you find that these kind of themes: theme of dislocation, theme of the alienation, theme of rootlessness, at the same time the theme of identity. So here in this particular novel, the main protagonist, uh, the is quest for a house, and obsession to own an house. So therefore this, and you know very well that Indians have different kind of rituals. And also whenever a boy is born, and we want to know the fortune of that boy, we go to a priest or to a person who can predict the future of that boy. So when Mr. Biswas was born in the family, his father got on what we call the astrological chart of this boy. And what he said is that because of this boy, this boy may become a cause for his father's death. That proved a very a kind of a disaster for the Mr. Biswas. So Biswas always not allowed to go outside the house. He was kept in the house, whereas his sister and other brothers, they had an what you call freedom to move outside the house, play, and do all kinds of activities. But Mr. Biswas felt alienated. And because Mr. Biswas, one of his act proves very futile, and because of that act his father dies. And therefore he goes in search of the what we call identity, and eventually he marries in a girl from the house of Tulsis, and which is very, house of many people. And from there, he moves for his identity, and he thought, he works very hard to own a house, and he buys a house. Unfortunately, he will come know that house is not legal one, and therefore, it is not worth to reside in that house. And because of that, he gets an heart attack and he dies at the age of 46. So that obsession of owning a house, proves a big tragedy for the Mr. Biswas. And the same way, the author, where you find some autobiographical element in that, the obsession of having a permanent place, and he could not find that permanent place either in India or in England, though he just chose England as a place of settlement. But he never felt at home in England, as Mr. Biswas felt in the, what you call, in the novel. Though he is married in a big family of many members, but he never felt at home, and he was alienated there, and he goes in search of what you call a work. He finds a work, he works hard to own a house, but in course of time that proves fertile. So the transnational, from going one place to other places, the transnational forges new ways of thinking and bridges relationship between the nations. Transnational migration across national boundaries, resulting cultural confrontations and identity crisis. Therefore, in diaspora discourse, search for identity and home constitute a significant factor. So the home constitute a significant factor. The transnational. So the V.S. Naipaul, father from India, V.S. Naipaul from Caribbean, V.S. Naipaul from England, and that where, the in the transnational discourse, the search for home proves very significant. In Rushdie's one of his work, Imaginary Homeland, expresses his longingness for a homeland. He writes, it reminds me that my present that is foreign, and the past is home, albeit a lost home in a lost city, in the midst of the affair of the lost time. So in the uh, imaginary homeland, the Rushdie writes that, that, is present, is settled in England, his present is what you call foreign, though he is knighted in England, but is present, because he says that it is foreign, but he never felt that felt that he's an Englander. He always felt a foreigner, and he says that the present is this, that is where I'm in a refugee land, and the past is that I am an Indian. I don't know whether I'm Indian or a Pakistani. So at the age of this man was born in India, and at the age of 14 he went to England for higher education. And in 1968 he goes to Pakistan to live with his parents. In 1964 his parents were merchants, so they choose Pakistan as their home country, their country. So they migrate to Pakistan when Rushdie was in England. So naturally the Rushdie has to go to Pakistan. He can't come to India when his parents were in Pakistan. So he goes to Pakistan in 1964. Yeah, in 1965 he stays with them for a couple of months, but he could not adjust to the Pakistan, the culture. Again he goes back to England and settles in England. And now this, he his, his first novel, that is the Grimus, in science fiction, published in 1975. His second novel, Midnight Children, uh, published in 1981. In the 1981, only he gets the Booker Prize for the Midnight Children. Diasporic writers, according to the Bohemian, he says that diasporic writers are the descendants of immigrants. Rushdie describes his identity as an Indian writer in England, though his parents settled in Pakistan. But he described himself as an what we call the Indian in England, not an Pakistani in England, but Indian in England. So therefore, the diasporic discourse puts a man in exile and is sandwiched between the home and the country where he has settled. The expatriates are marginalized communities who are alienated in the name of culture. They feel sense of loss, sense of dislocation, sandwiched between the two cultures, native and foreign. However, they try to cope up and adjust with their with their native identity, as well as a place of settlement. So this, the
Request
diasporic
to remind
people
us,
are
please.
sandwiched between the two culture, the foreign and the native culture. But however, as according to this Rushdie, they adjust themselves with the native identity and as well as the place of settlement. Raddish Midnight Children is more of history and political anarchy in the Indian subcontinent than diasporic element. In the Rushdie's second novel, which has become very popular, and this particular novel was banned in India, in 19 around that time. But later on, because it has something to do with the Indira Gandhi's emergency period and all those things. So the entire novel, oscillates between India, Pakistan, and back India. So therefore, it talks about the Indian history and the political anarchy in India. Rajdi, being an history student, is very suspicious of subcontinent history. That's why, after all, he is interested in the third world counter narrative. He fictionalizes reality with a heap of fantasy and becomes magic realistic. In Midnight Children, Rushdie is searching for his identity, born in India and grown in Britain. He has become a product of hybridity and diverse. The protagonist Salim has a hybrid identity. He was illegal child of William Methwork, a British, and a Vanita, a Hindu. When he was born, he was swapped by nurse Mary Ferreira and brought up in a Muslim family. He feels that his birth at midnight and India's independence on the same day has some importance. Significantly, Salim's Shanai surrounds with the mythical, cultural, and spiritual importance. Midnight Children documents the dismented wanderings of a split self in a quest of wholeness and an identity. So the Salim Shanai, goes to Pakistan and again come back to India in search of his identity. Actually, who is he? To whom he was born? Because of the mischief of a nurse, Michael Ferreira, Mary Ferreira, he was what we call is he was changed. He was given to what we call to the Muslim parents, and the boy was born to the Muslim parents, were given to the what we call to the Vanita, who was not actual mother of this. So why? Because is that the Mary Ferreira was in love with a socialist, person. A socialist person never, he wants the equality. He wants equality among all the people.
Well,
So
sir, we are already getting late, sir.
once,
So,
I'm
please
coming. Yeah,
to
yeah,
end up, sir. Please.
right. So the Midnight Children is a documents the dismented wanderings of a split and a self in quest of wholeness and identity. Now, when I conclude, in the age of globalization, privatization, and marketization, social networks and the cultural phenomenon have become increasingly fluid, less tangible, and more interconnected. In the past globalization era, culture life has changed human relationships and social upheavals. These diasporic writers are far above excellence and exhibited truth in their cultural creative works. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Uh,
Thank you.
I am really overwhelmed to listen to your comprehensive and inspiring elaboration of VS Nepal. You also pointed out a subtle difference between transnational and diasporic approaches. You have also uh, endeavored to explore the emotions of rootlessness, cultural crisis, identity crisis, and so on. Of course, I admire your effortless expression, your flamboyance, and your exuberance. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We are really indebted to you for uh, plucking your precious moment and delivering an inspiring lecture for the
Thank you.
uh, development of the teachers. Now, now starts the question and answer session. There might be certain questions related to the topic set. And for this, I request Madam Niva Singh to
Thank you, sir.
to expedite it.
We are running short of time, but still we can take one or two questions. One question which has come is from Dr. Muhammad Rakibul Islam. How can we link memory with nostalgia?
Yeah, I mean, memories are long-lived. I mean, even the nostalgia is also called, it's a carried. Memories and nostalgia both are carried. I mean, memories sometimes, they get, erased, but the nostalgia will never get erased. For example, Salim Shinai, the main protagonist of the Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children, when he comes back to India from Pakistan, and he comes to India to know his identity, who actually he is. So in Bombay, when he has a taste of a chutney there, then he realizes that when he was a very young, he had the same kind of a taste. So therefore, he searches for the person who has prepared the chutney. Then he finds that person, that's a Mary Ferreria, who works in a pickle factory, and that lady, used to make chutneys. So therefore, that's kind of nostalgia. Taste, he carried for a longer time, though his memory got erased. For example, he had a telepathy, that kind of the thing he had, because he was born on the midnight of India's independence. He got that unique character. But when in Pakistan, when he was hit by a spoon of his grandfather's, he lost his memory there. And but suddenly, later on, he recollects also. So the memories get lost and get recollected. The nostalgia, feeling for the past, feeling for the what you call is people, it will be there whenever, whenever you are in a kind of a embarrassing situation, or when you are in a kind of a displacement, you suddenly link about your past. You think about your pleasant days. So that is what nostalgia. So therefore, there is a subtle difference between the memory and the nostalgia, but goes on in the similar lines.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. What I feel is nostalgia, I think, sir, you may clarify it. Nostalgia, as I think, correlates to something that you long for and you want to have it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Memories can be good as well as bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Nostalgia, I think, always connects to positive memories.
Yes, yes. That particular thing, incident, that tasting the chutney, prepared by that Aya there, that is what we call the nostalgia. He has that, you remember that he had this thing in the when
There
he
is
was a
some
boy.
gravitational pull in nostalgia
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly.
for the homeland.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Not only for the homeland, you can be nostalgic
Yeah,
about
correct.
country itself.
Yes.
yes,
Something that you have an association with the
Yes,
past,
yes,
yes.
nostalgic feeling
Yes.
that you crave for.
Yes.
These are not always, I mean, nostalgia is always longing for the past good memories that you have had.
Yes.
excellent.
Gravitational pull for that.
Exactly.
Good memory of
Yes.
the past.
Good memory of the past.
Memories
Past,
of,
yes.
memories of the
So
past.
as Professor Niba Singh said that the memories are both good and a bad. Usually we doesn't want to have that bad memories in our mind. We want to have only good memories. So we de-link to the bad memories.
Mhm.
That's what.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an illuminating lecture.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
we thought that the time was not enough. The topic was more elaborate than the time
Yes.
that we allotted for it.
Yeah,
But sometime next time we will love to listen to you again.
yeah,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Now I request Professor Deena Nath to take over the charge and to introduce Professor Dr. Anita Singh from BHU and request her for her next lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening. I welcome you all to the webinar. Thanks a lot, Professor Nivaji, for giving me the responsibility of conducting the second technical session of the webinar as a moderator. Myself, Deena Nath, Associate Professor and Head Department of English, JJ College, Gaya. and an executive member of the All India English Teachers Association. It is my proud privilege to let the audience know that the Postgraduate Department of English, Magad University, Bodh Gaya, hosted the 64th All India English Teachers Conference last February. This was a historic occasion. I take this responsibility to thank the local secretary, Dr. Nibha Singh, and her team, including myself, for the grand success of the conference. This webinar is another feather in its cap. I must thank the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Magad University, Dr. Rajan Prasad ji, and the officials and the faculty members of the PG Department of English and the teaching fraternity of S.N. Sinha College, Jahanabad, especially Dr. Subodh Jha, the co-convener of this webinar, for the keen interest in organizing this desired literary event during the Corona days, when we shudder a lot to come out of our houses and premises. I also thank the participants and the viewers on this grand occasion. Today's chief speaker is Professor Madam Anita Singh ji from BHU. Her presence here makes me nostalgic and emotional, in the sense that I invited her to this university for the first time to conduct the PhD viva of one of my research scholars. Today, I feel privileged to introduce Madam Singh to the learned audience. Dr. Anita Singh is a professor in the Department of English and coordinator of the Center for Women's Studies and Development at Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. She was a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Study at Simla from August 2018 to March 2020. She received Fulbright Nehru Visiting Scholar Fellowship for the year 2013 and 14 at the University of Virginia, USA. Her two recent edited books are Gender, Space, and Resistance, Women and Theater in India, 2013, Revisiting Literary Theory and Criticism, Indian and Western Perspective, 2018. She has completed a major research project sanctioned by the Indian Council of Social Science Research on staging gender, performing women in Ramlila of Ramnagar in September 2016. She has also published interviews with Indian women theater artists in the Asian Theater Journal, University of Hawala Press. She has contributed in 4 chapters in the Routledge Handbook of Asian Theater. She was the guest editor for the special issue of the journal Gender Issues, published in 2018. She was the conference chair for the Future of Women Conference held in Malaysia 2018, in Colombo, Sri Lanka 2019, and in Bangalore 2020. Her forthcoming book is Staging Feminisms, Gender, Violence, and Performance, Routledge publication. With this brief introduction, now I request Professor Anita Singh to enlighten us on the topic emerging trends in drama and theater pedagogy. Madam, I request you to please share your views with us and do something great in this regard. Madam Singh, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dinanathji, for your very kind introduction.
Thank you.
I too have very beautiful memories of Magar. So I begin with my greetings to the head department of English and the convener of this seminar, Dr. Nibha Singh, for inviting me very kindly here, and to all the organizers and conveners. Somehow my video is not working. It is coming very distorted. I don't know, like it is coming black and white, so I can't switch it on. Maybe if I log off and log in, then it could be okay. Or I don't need a video. I have my, I have to share my, is it okay, Nibha? You are muted, huh? Yeah.
Okay, ma'am, it's okay.
Because you can see my video is coming very distorted. I don't know why sometimes it happens.
It happens some technical issue. It's no.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
So maybe when I come back, so it will be okay later. So you can see this is the topic of my presentation. So I would want to finish off soon so that we have some time for discussion. So you can see the topic is the current state of drama theatre pedagogy. So this is the structure of my presentation. I will begin with the pedagogical shift, an overview of the pedagogical shift. Then I'll come to differential definitions of what we mean by theatre, drama, and performance. Then I'll come into what is dramatic communication and communications is drama. And I'll take one instance of the theatre of the operas and how it can be used in classrooms. And lastly, I will take up the concept of hyperdrama and drama in times of COVID. So this is the broad outlay of my of the structure of my presentation. So here I am trying to give you a very broad overview of the pedagogical shift as far as drama is concerned also. So when we talk about this, the teaching of theatre or teaching of Shakespeare, teaching of drama in classrooms, we have to really bear in mind that it was only in the 20th century that literature became a widely taught subject in schools, colleges, and university. English as a subject existed only outside the United Kingdoms, in Scotland, in the University of Edinburgh in 18th century, and in USA in Harvard University in 1876. And we know sometimes in British India it was 1930 that literature was taught, and this was taught with the purpose to familiarize the natives and to instill Western values, taste, and moral. And the whole purpose was to make us civilized, because we were considered to be very uncouth and barbarous and so on. And their literature would kind of civilize us and so on. So the whole idea of instituting or starting literature as a discipline or as a subject was, it believed like Arnold's, in Arnold's footsteps, that great literature was a timeless thing. Literature teaching assumed, like Dr. Johnson, that great literature was universal, expressed general truths about human life. Teachers and students discuss writers' personal experience, social and historical, the imaginative genius, the poetic beauty of it. Or in other words, one would say that literature was without disturbing our picture of the world and of ourselves as reader. The study of literature then to begin one can conclude was essentially biographical or historical. In this approach, the work of art frequently appeared to be secondary importance, somewhat that merely illustrated the background. This approach is still used in most of our classrooms still now. But well into 20th century, however, a new type of literary analysis emerged in which literary work per se became the dominant concerns of scholars. So the new critics, so to say, were the proponents of this position. They were called, and they insisted that scholars concentrate on the work itself, on the text, examining it as an art. This method revolutionized the study of literature. We are aware of I.A. Richards and others. So to take one example, Caroline Spurgeon wrote a pioneer study called Shakespeare's Imagery and What It Tells Us. And for this work, she did card indexing, tabulation of the imageries of Shakespeare's plays, and so on. So the entire idea was to have a very scientific and a universal tools and technique in order to understand works of literature. Late 20th century and early 21st century has seen an extraordinary flourishing of new interpretive approaches. Drama was approached then as an ideological driven mode. For instance, Shakespeare's texts were widely read, and or other texts, not just Shakespeare, any text, maybe Shaw or whatever, were widely read using psychoanalytical, post-colonial, new historicist, feminist, among other approaches. So we were reading text more as under the light of, or using the light of, these theoretical backgrounds. So again, in early 20th century, there was a shift that occurred, so which is called the semiotics. Now, semiotics shifted from the page to the stage, shifted this whole kind of understanding of the drama from the stage to the page, one would say. Until this time, dramatic poetics, the descriptive science of drama, had made little substantial progress until since its Aristotelian origin. Drama had become the property of literary critics, while stage spectacle was considered to be too ephemeral a phenomenon for systematic study. Now, one name that comes very importantly in the early 20th century is the whole concept of semiology that borrows the tenets from Ferdinand de Saussure, the course in general linguistics. And since the 60s and 70s, the structural analysis of narrative have been applied to various literary and artistic fields: fairy tale, comic strips, film, plastic arts, and even food and wine and the way you dress, and so on. It permeates into a whole cultural context as well. So the Prague school semiotician cultivated critical models for understanding performance phenomena, and they played an essential role in the evolution of semiotic theory for theatre by establishing the idea of theatre as consisting of a variety of sign systems. And they said that everything on stage was now considered to be a sign. Now, drama ceased to be something that only the literary critics, analyze. Now, drama was also analyzed as a performance piece, because they believed it is not words on the page that give meaning, but the way when drama is realized in a theatrical platform, the light, the sound, the movement, the gestures, the silence, everything needs to be used as a continuum of signifiers. Now, I would come further. The current trend in performance analysis is a return, now the second trend that shifted from the page to the stage. So one trend was the semiotics, which moved the drama simply as being, a textual study to a study of the stage as well. So we were doing both the stage as well as the page when we were doing the semiotic. But with phenomenology, where body becomes very important, then drama moved very significantly to the stage. Body became a repository of cultural meaning. I have mentioned three performance studies scholar, Erika Fischer-Lisch, her work, The Transformative Power of Performance, Marvin Carlson, Theatre Semiotics, Signs of Life, and Patrick Pavis, The Current State of Theatre Research. So they have all in their own ways, discussed how body or lived experience becomes very important. And one would say this originates from the phenomenology of perception by Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who argued that people perceive and conceptualize everything bodily. He stipulated that our very consciousness is embodied, abolishing the idea of the separation of the mind and the body, which stretched back, of course, to Plato and so on. So performance studies scholars were, performance study as a discipline was establishing itself more broadly, and towards to the lower side of the slide, you can see Richard Setner. He kind of expanded the whole idea of the notion of theater. He said everything is performance. We are all performing. If you take up the idea of Irving Goffman, he said in his work, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, he says we are all performing. And he borrows this statement from Shakespeare: all the world is a stage. So we are all performing differently. So a cricket match would be a performance. So performance then became a larger term under which was subsumed the drama or the theater, so to say. And yeah, so Erika Fischer-Lisch, I pointed out here, I mentioned her name. So she says, what is performance now? So she uses 4 definitions, 4 arguments. She says, performance comes into being by bodily co-presence of actors and spectators. Secondly, what happens in performance is transitory because it is staged and it does not stay, because the actors act, you respond, and the whole thing is done. Performance does not transmit pre-given meaning. Performances are characterized by eventness and so on. So these were certain, one would say, new departures in performance study. So moving from the textual analysis or believing that theater has a pristine, or literature has a pristine truth to unravel before the readers, we moved on to ideological oriented schools to more bodily oriented schools. Now, these 2 texts that we come across in a bookshop or in a library or in a curriculum, we will find drama section next to fiction and the poetry sections. But does that mean that play is a type of a text just like a novel or a poem? Today, most theorists assume that the true nature of a play lies in its orientation towards public performance, towards being or becoming a play in the performance, in which the characters' part are enacted by the actors. The play's text is variously seen as a guide to a performance, comparable to a blueprint or a musical score, or even a recipe for baking a cake. So then play is a multimedial form designed to be staged in a public performance. And on the other hand, then uh, one would say a text is a monomedial form. It's a monomedial form, whereas a play is a multimedial form. Now, this early definition, this definition of drama and a performance was already inherent in our 2 great texts, Aristotle's The Poetics and Natya Shastra. Both these texts mention that drama has to be a total theater. We have to take into account plot, character, thought, spectacle, song, dance, music, everything together in totality create a theater. And of course, Natya Shastra goes to a very great extent in describing all these stage elements that go into the making of a theater, the totality of a performance event, so to say. So they were looking at performance in a more holistic way, not just reading a drama as a or doing a textual analysis, which we very often reduce a performance to. Now, what I have done here, I have taken 3, slots, and I have, tried to define what we understand by reading a dramatic text, theater studies, and performance analysis. So, first slot is reading a dramatic text. So, what we do is we have interpretive strategies, which are close reading of the text. We read the text closely, and we say this is in the text, and so on. The second is agenda is dislike of actors, audience, and theatrical institution, because the basic purpose is to decode a text, to read a text. And the catchphrase are poetic drama, dramatic poetry, drama as literature. Basically, so the first slot is drama as literature. The second slot then is theater studies. So the interpretive strategies are analyzing a performance as a product of theatrical condition, a sociology of drama, stage codes and stage semiotics. So from the text, we move entirely to the stage now. And then the agenda is establishing a distinct discipline. It's a distinct discipline. It is not to be read simply. It is to be performed. Play is the thing, as Shakespeare said. And the catchphrase is plays coming to life in performance. Play has no meaning till it is on the page. It only is realized when it is performed on stage. Now, the third is performance analysis, where we can, as teachers, so basically my thrust is more pedagogical. So as teachers, we cannot always be doing theater studies. So we can mix and mingle these 2 approaches. When we are teaching theater drama, we have to bear in mind it has a theatrical side also. So either we can use YouTube, performances we can show in the class, or when we teach, we have to be very conscious about the stage directions and so on and so forth, so that we do not teach poetry as we teach a prose. So similarly, when we teach drama, we have to bring in mind its theatrical implication, so that the student get an idea of its performative aspect as well. Shakespeare never intended his plays to be simply read. He was always a performer. Now, I will move on further to this slide I had mentioned as dramatic communication and communication in drama and so on. So there are, when we look at a play or when we take a play, so there are so many levels of interaction. So first level of interaction is the non-fictional communication between the author, director, producer, actor. Here is the audience, the reader, or the spectator. So this is the non-fiction level. The spectators go to the theater, and the author has written it, the director has directed it, or producer, and so on. Then at the narrative level, of narrative, so there could be a narrator and a narratee. So a target narratee, whom is he addressing to? Then at the level of the interaction, at the level of characters who talk to each other. So these are the levels of the way that the text interacts at the at the non-fiction level, and at the level of fictional level, and at the level of the play's action, so to say. Now, there are two types of text I have mentioned. There's not really deal with drama, one would say. It can be taken for any other text. So there is a primary text of a play script. There is a primary text and something that is called a secondary text. So what constitutes a primary text? Which includes prologues, speech, dialogue, monologue, soliloquy in a text, aside. So they all constitute the primary text. They are the main text. Like I have given you some examples. The king is angry. I can see there's not too much time, so maybe I can come back to this. So this is called the primary text. Now, very often primary text and the secondary text together collaborate in order to give meaning. Now, what are the secondary texts? Gerald Jennett says secondary text elements such as prefaces, postfaces, blurbs, dedication, textual notes, peritextual elements, all these constitutes the secondary text. And sometimes in the text itself, there are elements of secondary text. That is the stage directions, readerly or actorly directions. For instance, sometimes like if you look at this, the first one, Krapp remains a moment motionless, heaves a great sigh, looks at his watch, fumbles, I cannot see the sign, puts in it back, fumbles, takes out a small bunch of key, raises it to his eyes, and so on. So this is a narrative stage direction recounting a character's physical action. So this has nothing to do with the primary text, so to say. So this becomes a part of the secondary text because it is a stage direction. Now here the second one, in the play, Shaw's play Candida, the play ends with a famous stage direction. Clearly, it is meant for the reader. It says, they embrace, but they do not know the secret in the heart of the poet. So this becomes a primary text because it is a part of a text. So here the dramatist becomes a narrator addressing to a narratee, the reader. So now I'll give you a small, a small part from a play, and you have to tell me, you have to answer two questions. You can write in your chat box. So I'll put two questions before you. The questions are also there before you. There is a party at the Conways. This autumn evening of 1990, but we cannot see it, only hear it. All we can see at first is the light from the hall coming through curtained archway on the right of the room, and a little red firelight on the other side. And now Hazel dashes in, switches on the light. We see at once that actually I cannot see this, that she is a tall young creature dressed in her best for the party. With all the reckless haste of a child, she, Carol, bangs down all this stuff and starts to talk, although she has no breath left. And now, adding that Carol is an enchanting person, we can leave them to explain themselves. It is Presley's Time and Conway. Now, two questions I have asked you. Is this a readerly? Is it meant for the readers or is it meant for the actors? The stage direction, is it meant, and who is the speaker of the stage direction? So last line could give you a clue. We can leave them to explain themselves. So what do you think? You can answer in your chat box. I can see that a little later. Okay. Now, this is a famous Freytag's pyramid model. And this model talks about how the play begins. This is a model of how a play is structured. Now, all plays are not structured similarly. These are conventional, traditional, well-made play. Now, if you come to the existential or the open-ended plays, so if a well-made play has a kind of a linearity, it moves from point A to point B to point C, and it ends in point C or whatever. So an open-ended play, or for instance, an existential play, has a circular movement. It moves from point A, point B, and maybe come back to point A. So here, if in a conventional play, the typical question that we ask is, what is going to happen next? What is going to happen next? Now we meet people. What is going to happen next? There's a climax. Now what is going to happen next? So if our typical question that is elicited by the audience is, what is going to happen next? Maybe in an absurd drama, the question that the audience puts to him or her is, what is it that I'm seeing? Because the plot unfolds like a poetic image, and you're very confounded. What is it that I'm seeing? For instance, if you've seen Waiting for Godot, so after it you see, what is it that I saw? What was it that was performed? What is the meaning of the play? What are the meaning of the images and so on? So this is Freytag's model, and it starts with, you can see a typical and a well-made play. So whether you see Shakespeare's play or whether you take up the 19th century play or early 20th century, Eugene and Ibsen, Shaw, all these plays had this kind of a structure. It was called Eugene Scribe and Victorian Sardou. So this is basically a structure of a play. So this is how a character is developed in a play. So one is figural. Figural means the characters in a play. So characters in like this happens in a real life, or this way, or this is the way one unfolds the characters in real life, one would say, or a fictional narrative or whatever. So the figural or narratorial. So either the characters are revealing about themselves explicitly or implicitly. Either they are talking about themselves or somebody else is talking about them. So this is how characters in a text reveal themselves. Either they talk about themselves or somebody else is talking about them, or the narrator is talking about them in the primary text or the secondary text. Either it is verbal or non-verbal, as I said, the movements and so on. So these are the layers by which we understand a character. So not just but by the words that are spoken, but the actions that are performed, somebody else says something, and so on. So this is how the characters unfold in a drama. Now, one example I thought I will give you is Augusto Boal's The Theatre of the Oppressed. Now, this is a very pedagogical theatre. He borrows this form from Paulo Freire's The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and he calls his theatre the Theatre of the Oppressed. He's a Brazilian theatre activist, and his purpose was to transform spectators into spectators. So very often in a conventional play or in a conventional movie, the spectators are merely consumers of what is happening on the stage. So he wanted to transform this, and he wanted the spectators to be more active participant in what is going on the stage. So he's against the elitist top-down approach in education and in theatre. So you can translate it in education. So in our education system is also very hierarchical. The teacher comes and stands on a podium and delivers a lecture, and maybe there would be one or two interceptions and so on. So this whole idea of the banking system and the culture of silence which Paulo Freire mentions in his Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He says, we believe the traditional approach to pedagogy or to theater has been a banking method, that the audience comes empty-minded and you stuff their mind with something and they go back full. Or this creates a culture of silence because you are giving them everything that is ready-made and they're supposed to take your ready-made stuff and go back. So Baul then created this as a theater forum, and in India there are two theater groups that use this kind of a practice of the theater of the oppressed, where one is a very grassroots level theater group, which is Jan Sanskriti, Theater of the Oppressed in Kolkata. You can visit this, or you can just Google this group because their website is very clear and it's very well maintained. So you will get a very good idea. So what they do is they take issues to the grassroots level and they form a theater or they make it open-ended and they bring responses, they take in responses from the audience and then develop the play, which is always in a process, which is always in a state of formation. The other I mentioned is the Center for Community Dialogue and Change. This is in Bangalore, started by Radha Ramaswamy, and she does mostly medical humanities. Because very often, if you look at the medical field, this is also very hierarchical. The doctor never tells you what ails you, and he scribbles something that is completely incomprehensible to you. So how to make the medical discipline more humane, more humane to the patient, because one who comes to visit the doctors are the patients. So they need more of a human touch. So how do they make the medical discipline or the medical institution more humane and more accessible to the patients? So they work, and this is how, and they too have a lot of workshops, and as I said, they too have a very good website which you can access and see if in case you are interested. Now, two forms of theater group I am mentioning now here. One is called, one I have called the hyperdrama, and the other is the hypermedia. Now, hyperdrama comes from the word hypertext. Hypertext, when you type, when you go to Wikipedia, there are certain blue links and you don't understand a word, it takes you to that hypertext. Now, how do we do hypertext in drama? How do we bring in the whole concept of hypertext in drama? So the hypertext is a more, one would say, participatory form of drama. One play, I have given you the example of one play, the Seagull. Seagull is a play which you can access, and the entire play is there in the hypertextual form. So what does the hypertext do is basically, a normal text is a single vision. It's a dramatist point of view. It has a linear narrative. Now, what a hypertext does, it explodes and branches and multiplies the action on stage. For instance, a character comes on stage. He or she enacts his part and then he goes away. The other character comes. So one wonders, what does that character do? What is this character doing backstage? So you can have, this could be used as a pedagogical tool, and you can have one act or one scene of a play and ask your students to imagine what a certain character who has gone off stage, what that character must be doing. What is the thought process of the character, so that next time when we see that character, so what is that character doing? What is in his mind? What does the character take from that particular scene, and so on. So hypertext is basically exploding of the scenes and branching out into more events and more, understanding it in a more deeper way, and so to say. Now, the other is hypermedia. The other concept is hypermedia. Hypermedia is an extension of hypertext, providing such facilities as sound, video. Now, you have a dramatic text, and a lot of Shakespearean texts are in hypertext. Even, Ibsen's texts they are all available. I forgot to mention a link. So, like, for instance, you're reading Shakespeare's text. So, if there is a song there, so that song is there as a hypertext. So, the song audio video is there. So you can click that. For Shakespeare's texts are all full of songs and music and so on. So, as I said, that for instance, if a play, you're reading, so it's a reading. So there is a reading of a play, and in between where a song comes, so then you can click on that, and that takes you to the song. Or for instance, somewhere a video is inserted in that hypermedia. So it gives you a very rich experience of engaging with a text. So it is not one medium that you are engaging a text with. You are engaging with multimedia in a particular text. So there are a lot of hypermedia text of Shakespeare's play that you will find in online, that you can easily explore and maybe take it to your students and so on. Now, finally, I will come to the last part. So I have actually skipped a lot so that we get a little more time to, or maybe you can also pull the first speaker and have more questions. So the last part is what are we doing and how is drama functioning during COVID? Because I ended my first part by saying that drama is a live embodied event where there is a co-presence of the spectator and the actor, and that is how a drama is created. But now in times of COVID, how do we have that kind of a live drama is characterized by liveness, whereas a fiction is something that you read in your you can read alone, but a drama is something that you need to see before an audience, because seeing it with an audience also gives it a different kind of a meaning, because the appreciation, the encore, the response to what is happening, they're all shared. So you become a shared community of the audience. So what happens then? We have a lot of ways in which drama is realizing itself in times of COVID: play reading, performance, Facebook performance, live apps to access play script, a lot of hypermedia text and hyper texts are all available online, which makes drama reading more engaging and participatory. It's more participatory. Then you can also not just now, but you can take it after this so-called COVID times also, create what is called podcast of drama. Like, you can have your student group divided into small sections and ask them to create podcast of maybe scene one, act one, scene one, to students, and then pull that podcast, pull all these video or innovative ways they have engaged with the text together into a text. So you can ask the students to to sum up what they have seen in one act and to recreate that in a very creative way, and then bring that all together. So what you have before you is a Shakespeare text that is largely reworked by your own students. So this could be a very important pedagogical tool, or an engagement with a text, use engaging with the text in a more one would say participatory way with your students. So not only you are familiarizing them with the text, but also you are making them engage with the text in a more interesting way, because very often text on page becomes slightly tedious, and you need to you need to devise and form very creative ways in which to engage students in a classroom. So now the whole concept of classroom, as I said, if we look back to Augusto Boal's idea of participatory forms of engagement, whether it is theater, whether it is teaching. So how do we see that this hierarchy is not really always there? Because a teacher now with the accessibility of the internet, teachers are no longer knowledge givers. We are not knowledge providers. We could be facilitators. We could be difficultators. We could be initiating critical understanding of a text. We are not there to give them information. So information rendering is not our purpose. Our purpose is to see how they develop critical engagement with text and critical analysis. So with this, I come to an end, and we can have questions. Okay. I can see if my video is still working. Yeah, my video has become sane now. So,
Okay. Dinanath ji, you have questions on your screen?
in that chat screen, I can't see any questions. Are they posting it somewhere else?
Yeah, actually there is a problem issue, ma'am. They are unable to place it in the chat box.
Okay.
And perhaps sending it to the co-convener, and he has sent it to me. I want to know whether the moderator has the questions or not. Dinanath ji, Dinanath ji, unmute yourself.
Yes, madam. I
Yeah,
have the questions from Dolan Ghosh, research scholar and a
Okay.
state college teacher from West Bengal. Her question is, theater promotes us to take risks and to advocate for new and diverse voices. What is your takes on, ma'am?
Okay. Yeah, of course, theatre does take, enable us to take risk because we are engaging with live audience. We are engaging with live audience, and it is a very creative forum. It is a very creative medium. And, when we are talking about the live performative events, so they are very live and you convey your message in an instant of time. So there is something that is happening instantaneously in a theater. So there is a risk, there is a risk and a lot of communication that happens in a theater. So communication happens very quickly in a theater. Whereas the voice is not with somebody saying something.
No, ma'am. It's okay. It's very clear.
Okay. So I thought somebody said the voice is not clear or something. Yes.
If you are audible, ma'am, you can continue.
No, there is no question.
Okay, yes. Dinanath ji, next question.
Dinanaji is muted. He is.
Unmute yourself, Dinanath ji.
Yes.
Yeah. Next question.
No, he's still he's reading, but he's muted.
You are
Okay.
muted. Yes. Now he has unmuted himself.
Now,
Yeah.
the next
Can you
question is from S. Sarvanan, how to identify stage direction in the drama of minimalism?
Minimalism.
Yeah.
Stage directions are identified in a text itself. So when you read a play, so the stage directions would be probably in italics, isn't it? So even if it is a minimalist play, there will be stage directions. They may be or may not be. It is up on the the dramatist to decide how to go on. Beckett's very minimalistic play, like Krapp's Last Tape, or there's something called Dustbin. So these are very minimalistic plays. There are stage directions. So stage directions are usually identified by the italics. They are placed in the italics. So I told you about two kinds of stage directions. One is meant for the actors and one is meant for the audience. So you have to understand what is meant for the actors and what is meant for the audience. So stage directions are there. That depends on how much the dramatist wants to lead you to an understanding of that particular text. So stage directions are indications of the way a play is structured. Yes.
There is also a question,
Yes.
how to recognize the emotional aspects of the characters while reading the play?
Okay. How to recognize the emotional aspect of the character while reading the play?
While reading the play, yeah.
So when you read the play, as my slide, I did that characterization. So a character is revealed only through the narrative, through the events as he performs, isn't it? So even we reveal ourselves to each other, like we reveal ourselves to each other by our actions, by our behavior, by what we say about ourselves, what somebody else says about us. Like for instance, I have met you today for the first time. So what Dinanath ji has told about me is something that you get, or what I tell you about myself, or what you understand by what I am speaking. So there are different ways to uncover a character. And how do you get emotionally attached to, or how do you get how do you recognize an emotion is through the incidents, so the rising emotion, or you involve yourself. So a play, a narrative uh, moves in a certain direction with the lives of the character, that the audience are involved in their story. So when you're involved in the narrative thread, so you start following the story. So the more involved you get, the more their happiness, their success, their failures start affecting you, and you start responding to these because you start identifying with the characters. Like in a Brechtian play, Brecht says that you should not identify with the character, but you understand the issues that they are raising. So in a conventional play, they want you to identify with the character. So you start identifying with the character, and that is why you also cry when you see a play, isn't it? You, when you go to see a movie, you cry because you get so involved in that character that you start identifying with the happiness, the sorrows that the character experiences. Okay, so are there more questions?
Thank you, madam.
Yes.
Are there more questions?
No questions.
Dinanaji?
No, I have no questions.
So there is one question, somebody has sent it to me. Why Samuel used the concept of minimalism in his plays?
Why Samuel Beckett took the concept of minimalism?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Beckett was doing a form of theater that was called that we recognize as absurd theater. He was considered to be, although these people did not really recognize themselves as there was no school, but Martin Esslin wrote a book called The Absurd Dramatists. So later on, they were clubbed together. A whole lot of the French dramatists, whether it was Beckett, Ionesco, uh, Pinter, and so many others, they were clubbed under the nomenclature of being the absurd dramatists. Now, absurd dramatists in turn were influenced by the existentialist philosophy. So the existentialist philosophy believed that we are born without wanting to be born, and no matter what you do, sufferings and happiness, suffering is more predominant in the life, and so on. So myth of Sisyphus, and then they say that we make good choices and bad choices in our life. So they say that we are born, and then we have essence. We are not born like the romantics. They do not believe that we are born with some essence. So we, through the choices that we make ourselves. That we create ourselves. We become good or bad through the choices that we make. So it was a very humanistic turn. Now, when the absurdist came, so they were challenging the entire form of theater. So they challenged the plot, they challenged language, and they challenged the characterization. So how did they challenge the plot? They said that beginning, middle, and an end. Life is not like that. Our lives are not beginning, middle, and end. Our lives are very circular. Like if you remember Virginia Woolf Smith Galloway. So what does she do? There's a kind of a circularity. There's no linearity as such. So even the absurdist dramatists, they also broke away the linearity of the narrative, and they said that life is all about, it's a halo. It's a halo. It moves in circle. It doesn't begin and it ends. So they dismantled plot. They dismantled language. It says language does not convey anything. So that is why in a Beckettian play, we see how language crumbles. Language is not able, we are not able to convey anything through language. Language is a very inadequate medium. So a lot of dramatists around that time were critiquing language. Another very important dramatist, Antonin Artaud, again a French dramatist, who is known to have initiated what we call the theater of the cruelty. So he too was against language. He says language does not convey anything. So he used sound, music, and other ways in which to communicate. So Beckett also thought that language does not communicate, and so the failure of language is what he talks about. And if you remember Lucky and Pozo's speech, Lucky's speech is all a whole jumble of words that does not convey anything. the absurdity of his dialogue, and so on. So the plays have very minimal settings, and there is a kind of significance in the minimality also. So like if you remember Waiting for Godot, so when the play opens, so there is a tree which is a barren tree that has no leaves, and when in the second act the tree has one leaf. So it signifies the movement of life. The life goes on. It signifies life goes on. The life does not end. So there is a kind of a minimality that they use in order to emphasize the starkness of human existence and so on. So any other question?
There is one question
Yes, there
from
is.
Vijay Chandra Verma.
Yes.
Is there any importance of intonation to recognize the emotional aspect of characters?
Yes, of course. Yes. Of course, your intonation, you can use flat speech, you can use a rising tone, you can use a falling tone. You know why, what are the functions or what are the uses of rising tone, what are the uses of falling tone, or what is a level tone, a level tone. So, I mean, for instance, if you say, what is your name in a level tone, what is your name? But you can use the same sentence in a rising tone. What is your name? So when you're using a rising tone, which means maybe you are speaking to a small child, or you're using a very affectionate tone, or you're using a falling tone. What is your name? Somebody has come before you and there's no emotion shared. So you use a falling tone. What is your name? So your tone goes down. So of course, tone has a very important aspect which cannot be realized when you're reading words on the page. When you're reading theater as drama, when you're reading a play text, the intonation aspect cannot be fleshed out. It can only be fleshed out the silences between the speeches, the silences, the intonations very often convey a lot of meaning which gets lost when a play is read only as a play text. So that is why they say that the play is the thing. The performance is more important than the play text, because meaning is not simply on the words on the page. Meaning is the way you utter your dialogue. Meaning resides in the sound. Meaning resides in the lighting. Meaning resides in the placement of the characters on stage, the movement on the character on stage, and whom are they addressing, how are they addressing, the props, the stage scene, and so on. So there are a lot of things that go to the making of a play that generate meaning, that culminate in a meaning, that creates a continuum of meaning. So meaning is not just a linear or one would say a mono affair. It is a multiple affair that gets created by so many things. Like for instance, somebody asks you, "Will you do this?" and you said, "Yes, I will do it." So if you just say this, "Yes, I'll do it," on a phone, maybe your expressions are not visible to somebody to whom you have said that. But if your expressions are visible and your expressions are not present, and you say, "Yes, I will do it," so the other person will question, "You're not very happy doing it, I suppose." So what you are saying is supplemented by how you say it. What is your expression? How you say it, that is also important. So as I said, meanings are fleshed out by so many different things, not simply by words on the page. And this can only be recuperated in when it is performed.
There is one more question, ma'am, from Sri Saravanan. Would you
Yes.
mind explaining us the nuances of open-ended play?
Okay. Like for instance, this Jan Sanskrit play called Shonar Me, Golden Girl, which in Hindi means Golden Girl. Now the play is about it uses a life cycle approach of discrimination against women. So of course the play begins with a girl child is born, she's not allowed to study, the boy in the family is allowed to study. Then eventually, how food is discriminated, studies is discriminated, everything, housework goes to the girl, the work outside goes to the boy, and so on and so forth. Okay, so how this gender segregation happens, and so on. And eventually when the girl gets married and she goes to her husband's house, and how she is discriminated there, and ultimately like she ends in her death or whatever. Now the play ends here, and the performers stop. and they ask the audience to intervene. So they open up the play. So it is called the opening up of the play. Now they say that how would you like to see this play performed? What is the best way to, I mean, how would you change what you have just seen? So how would you change this oppressive situation? So one person from the audience got up and he said that I, as the brother of that girl, wouldn't have allowed my father to discriminate. I would have told him like, why are you doing this? Like we both are equal, and so on. So one person in the audience said that I, as a husband, would have intercepted and not allowed my parents to behave in this way to my wife and so on. So this is a performative open-endedness, and a textual open-endedness would be any play of Girish Karnad. So there are alternative. Girish Karnad gives you alternative endings. So this has happened, or this is what happened, or this has happened. So probably Nagmandalam has 3 endings. So so you can imagine. So this is open-ended. You can imagine this ending or this ending, or some place like the Candida I showed you. Now Candida says nobody knows what is in the heart of the poet. So as audience, as readers, you are left wondering what is it that the writer really wanted to say. What was it behind the choice of Candida in choosing her husband and not the other person, and so on. So you keep an open-ended play allows the audience to speculate, to think, to engage in what could possibly have been the reason for this. Whereas a closed-ended play fulfills, like, is gives you this solution. So there's nothing for the audience to think. For instance, if you have seen what is called uh, the the third cinema, I don't know what you call that, the art movie. So if you leave, when the audience leave after the auditorium after seeing an art movie, so you see a lot of flurry of questions all around, because you're wondering what happened or what could have possibly happened. But after maybe a romantic Bollywood blockbuster, when everything is resolved, when the couples are shown to be living happily ever after, there's nothing to talk about. So once you come out of the movie, you talk about the songs, you talk about the dresses, you talk about the beauty of the characters, and so on and so forth. So the purpose of an open-ended play is to initiate dialogue and to involve the spectators and to make the spectators take back the play and reflect on what they have seen. Yeah. Are there any more questions?
Dinanathji?
It's time also, I suppose.
Dinanathji, do you have any more questions? Dinanathji, are you there?
He's muted.
He's again muted. Dinanathji, you need to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Dinanathji. He cannot hear. There's one more question, I think, ma'am. If an audience becomes spectacular, will it not create a confusion in the theater?
No, not at all. I mean, we are used to a conventional theater. Yeah, we are used to this conventional, form of theater where the spectators are passive recipients of pre-given meaning by the director, by the actors. Now, it does not create a confusion. As I said, that you must. There are a lot of YouTube. There's a very beautiful YouTube on the Doll's House performed by Jan Sanskriti, and you see how this, this open theater or the spectator, as this group calls the spectator as spect activist, whereas Augusto Paul would call the spectator as spect actors. So he calls them spect activist. So the modus operandi is a piece is performed, and then intervention starts, and then the piece opens up before. It's not like you perform something and then everyone chips in. It's not like that. There is a structure to it. And they adhere to this structure. For instance, I spoke what I had to speak, and then I stopped, and then I gave you time to speak. So it is not that I spoke all the time and I gave you no time to speak. Like, this is my thing, that there's nothing more that you can add to it. So the whole idea is this. So in a classroom, I mean, I suppose all us teachers here. So in a classroom, when we go, we create an interactive space. So you do something, or you come up with an idea and you ask students, so is it like this, or how do you think, how do you interpret this scene? This is how I interpret. Are there other ways of interpreting this scene? So for instance, if you're teaching Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, so you take up Act 1 and you say this is all happened in Act 1. So how do we look at Act 1? What are, so this is how I interpret, and how is it that you interpret? So you form a very collaborative, interactive form of communication between the teacher and the taught, between the actor and the spectator. So there's no hierarchy between them. So what we do is, in theater, we have created a hierarchy as well as we create a hierarchy in the classroom. So we create a culture of silence. We don't want our students to, because we think that we as teachers are coming up with the whole bundle of knowledge, and they are sitting with empty minds, and we are putting a lot of resources on their mind. So that is not and by doing this, we curb the creative faculties of the students. Similarly, in a theater, when it's only consumptive, it is only you consume, so you're not really adding on to something. So these participatory theaters are very democratic spaces in a way, so it does not cause a confusion at all. Yes.
So I think there are no more questions. Dinanath ji, you can wind up now. Let us come to a close.
No more questions. You have muted yourself.
Dinanath ji, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, I think he has some, yeah, you have to unmute. I said we can now come to a close. You can wind up.
Yes. Now I wind up. Thank you so much, Madam, for your enlightened talk on pedagogical shift in drama and theater teaching. Your talk was very inspiring and interesting, and I hope the teaching fraternity will be benefited more through these talks, and we shall cherish a good memory in our mind regarding your visit to this university to present a very nice paper during this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am, for sparing your time and being here with us.
Thank you so much, Nipa. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks to all of you. And I don't have to remind, I think, but still, this is my duty that tomorrow we again have to come at 3 o'clock, and we'll have 2 new speakers tomorrow. So thank you all, and we can close the webinar now. Subodhji.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks to Dr. Arvind and Dr. Dinanath. Special thanks to both
Thanks a
of
lot,
you.
ma'am, to you too.
Thank you, Karnataka.